Yes, hello everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of Knowledge Worth Sharing Season 2. Today's guest is a very special guest, a true friend, a dear friend to me, a close friend who I've known from genius days, and we have fostered through our days in JSCS School, my comrade, and also my classmate in the school as well. So today's guest is Brooke Slopak. She is a certified JSCS certified life coach and also a teacher in Melbourne, Australia. So, Brooke, welcome to this podcast. I mean, this has been a long time coming, but finally you are here.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be on your podcast, and it was such a joy to be your comrade in studying. I learned not only so much alongside you, but so much from you. So thank you for that, Yuvarajan.
You're welcome, Brooke, and the honor is mine. I mean, like I feel honored to be in the same class with you because not just as I mentioned earlier, not just that to learn with you, but I've learned more from you as well because learning about coaching thing and coaching thing is something quite foreign to me because as I mentioned earlier, both of us are teachers, so we have to learn how to distinguish between coaching and teaching. So this is a very important thing that we have to set the line. Where does the teaching stops and where does the coaching starts?
Yeah, definitely something that I learned throughout the course was how to have different hats and take on different personas at different times, because that teaching with the teacher within you, it's so hard sometimes to silence that teacher. So you don't want to silence them. You want to acknowledge that they're there, but you want to use them in a different capacity when it comes to coaching. So definitely agree with that.
Absolutely. So Brooke, can you please tell a bit about yourself to the audience?
Yeah, no problems at all. So I'm a school teacher. I'm a life coach, as you've mentioned. I just got my certificate in the mail. So it feels really real now that I can hold it up in my hands. I'm very passionate about inclusion and inclusivity. I grew up in sort of an immigrant family. My dad was the first to be raised here. He's of Ukrainian culture, and my mother is Australian. So her family has been here for a long time in Australia, but my dad was the first generation here, and we're the second generation now, and our children are the third. So lots of studying, lots of sport has been a part of my growing up, and just lots of learning how to really understand that from small steps comes true transformational change. So lots of small steps, huge progress made within our family.
So for what I hear from you, that it's now that you're saying that you are half Ukrainian and half Australian. So how does the mix of these two culture going up like? How is it like?
Well, for me growing up, it was very different because my dad really assimilated. And that's why I find what you're doing with your purpose with knowledge worth sharing just so important, because it wasn't until more recently that I've gotten to know my father on a different level. He assimilated. We learned the Australian culture and way of life. I'm the only, my brother and I, we didn't learn Ukrainian. We were baptized into the Catholic, but we were not raised in a Ukrainian culture at all because of my dad's assimilation. He found it very hard growing up to be a Ukrainian within a society that was not sure of these people that were just immigrating at the time. So he didn't want that for my brother or I. So we grew up very differently. But that's why I think what you're doing is so important, because as a second generation family here for me, it's just, how may I say, the work that you do enables me to understand my culture more, and also for me to not be so hard on my father for that assimilation, if that makes sense, because he was only trying to do what was best for him at the time and what he thought would be for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Brooke, thank you for sharing that. So Brooke, I noticed that you mentioned the word assimilation a few times. So we do have the definition of dictionary, we have definition from prominent people, but as we are now talking about being authentic, I really want to know your definition of assimilation.
So for my dad, it was the fact that he was called a wog, or the fact that he was called something else growing up. And he was always looked at differently because he was learning 2 languages, or he did speak 2 languages, which back then when he was growing up, it was very foreign. It's now much more accepted within Australian culture, but back then it wasn't. And he just didn't want that to happen to us. So he sort of put his language underneath his cap, if that makes sense, and hid it for so very long. All of the teachings and all of those sorts of things, he stopped engaging within the culture purely to take on an Australian, as he called it, way of life. And then when he married my mum, who is Australian, she was really a driving force into more so, I guess, she didn't want him to assimilate, but she just helped him to uncover who he was. And more recently, you've seen with the war going on in Ukraine, you've seen him come down to that consensus of, I wish I hadn't have done that. But at the time growing up, he didn't know what was different. And it was not, Australian society was nowhere near as inclusive as it is now. So if you grew up and you were an immigrant, a child of an immigrant, there was a lot of factors that came into play, not just the fact that you could be called names, but also other, I guess, things you may miss out on if you're not from the Australian culture. It has completely shifted now. We have, within our street alone, we have people of various different cultures. So, and within schools now, I'm a teacher. It's very rare to see someone who isn't multicultural or having 2 cultures within my students' classroom as well. But back then it was new.
Yeah. So, the crux from what I can see from the crux that what you mentioned just now is like, in order for someone to assimilate to a new culture, we need like a guiding force, like someone who can help with the background to make the process more easy. Can we say it in that way?
Yeah, it was definitely something he went by on instinct. So it was his way of protecting him and us from any untowards coming.
Mm-hmm. So, Brooke, my next question will be, what brings you to JSCS?
What brought me to the JSCS was the fact that I actually did it for myself. I'm going to sound really selfish here. Mm-hmm. I wanted to develop and continue to grow, and to really work out why I thought I had to give advice all of the time, rather than actually being able to step back to just ask the questions to others. Mm-hmm. So I found that I was always somebody that people would come to speak to about their problems, or that I was always trying to work out what was going on for people without really allowing them to have the autonomy of their own GPS. So for me, it was a matter of, I really still want to help people, but I really know that I should step back and take it more through the lens of helping them develop their questions so that they can take their own actions, rather than me being the notorious advice giver that I think I had become.
Wow, love it. I think you have explained it so well, and thank you for sharing that. So, Brooke, as you have mentioned earlier, that both of us are classmates. We have the same supervisor. We spent almost similar time frame in JSCS. So both of us are, can we say, like close buddies? We are like mates in the school, right?
Definitely.
Yeah. So I don't want to ask you, how was the experience like in JSCS?
I definitely would recommend it, whether you are going to do it like I did for myself. I'm unsure if I will become a life coach, but I definitely know I will use the coaching within my own teaching practice as well, and as a friend, mother, sister, and aunt, and to obviously all of the beautiful people that I get to meet throughout the time. It was definitely awe-inspiring. We were very blessed to have a supervisor that was able to rip us back raw. So in saying that, I've always done really well at school. I did really well with all of those sorts of things, but I remember her saying to me on one call, because we get supervision calls, there's something holding you back. And for me, it was that fear of being authentic, and that fear of, oh, my son's come up the stairs and I can't say anything right now. I have to look a certain way. And it comes down to that perfectionism that I think my father developed when he did assimilate, because that was, well, I don't want to deal with the negative that, I don't know, there's juxtapositions between the negative and the positive. And he just didn't want to have to deal with any negative. So it was just, I'll assimilate here, we'll stop the culture, and we'll just be able to be Australian, and no one will say anything. And I feel that I felt that perfection had to be there. And on that call with her, she said, what are you doing with your hand at one point? I think I had my hand up like this. And she was like, what are you doing, my supervisor? And I said to her, my son's come up the stairs. I need to tell him to go down because he's going to interrupt us. And she's like, no, just welcome him to here, bring him here. And I remember thinking, oh no, that's not right. That's wrong. There's all these things into play there. But just the fact that she was able to rip me raw, like I say, and enable me to see that that's not an issue. That's okay. That's an everyday life situation. We wear so many different hats. We are human. And my son needed something at that point. And having him come up those stairs and her embrace him the way that she did and just completely normal enabled me to see what they're looking for at the JSCS is authenticity. They just want to see you be authentic, and they want to see humanism at its main point. The thing that we have is that we all wear walls. We all build these walls up, and we remove ourselves from our authenticity in fear of it not being perfect. And what I learned through the JSCS and the invaluable conversations, for me, for example, being from Australia, our supervision calls were at like 3 a.m. So it was very interesting to make those, but I found if I missed those calls and those discussions, those enriched discussions from your supervisor and your comrades and colleagues, you just miss so much, because it really, it taught you the true essence of self. Mm-hmm. So if my advice to anyone that wants to study, whether it be for your own self or because you're looking at making that movement to becoming a life coach, it's rewarding either way.
Yeah, thank you, bro. And a big shout out to our supervisor, Yomna. If you're listening to this, it's a big shout out to you. We love you, and we thank you for guiding us to become a life coach. Thank you.
Definitely. I feel like when that paper came in the mail, it was just like, because we've been waiting a while, but COVID lockdown obviously has played a lot. And then the backlog of, I guess, the Australia Post, it was just like, wow, it's real. And I'm still holding, I want to frame it and put it up in the air. And I've got many other degrees. I've never been to a graduation. I've never framed anything. I've never put anything up. And I'm like, now I want to. And it's really helped me find my purpose in my life, which is to go forward and study more further about neurodiversity. I really believe that not just culturally, but neurodiverse, we are all different thinkers. And it's so important that we pave that way for society in the future. So yeah, shout out to Yomna, shout out to everyone that we had a chance to learn from, and definitely a shout out to the JSCS.
Yeah, thank you, bro. And I mean, just like you mentioned about being imperfect. I mean, the very beauty of human being is being imperfect, because that makes every one of us unique, like a thumbprint, like a DNA. Because all of us, if all of us want to be perfect, I mean, we are just merely copying another people's template. For example, there's only one group, there's only one Yuva, there's only one so and so and so. So that what makes us unique and authentically beautiful, right?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. But for me, it was definitely, they speak about an onion in our course, and you have to peel back those layers. And for me, it was definitely layers of perfectionism that I'd built up around me. It had to look a certain way. It had to be a certain way. I couldn't have those interruptions from my 10-year-old son. I had to have it a perfect bundle. And it's just been so all-encompassing for me to be able to now have those aspects of my identity peeled back, and me getting to that why, because you're right, we're all such unique individuals. And I think everyone's uniqueness, whether it be from race or neurodiversity, or just because there may be other factors into play there. It's just that we all should embrace each other. And the fact is, in society, unfortunately, we have society structures that don't necessarily enable that. So
yeah, especially the peeling the onion example, that was pretty good. But except that when you peel the onion, you get teary eye. Jokes.
Yeah, but I think you have to walk through the greatest adversities in order to be able to get to your authenticity. So I don't predict for anyone it's easy, but it's definitely worth it.
Yeah, definitely worth the effort and the action. So, bro, I just want to go a bit more about when you mentioned about fear of being in fear of being perfect, because I mean, it started from intent, right? The intent was there. The intent was noble. You know, like you already mentioned earlier, you don't want your son to be as to experience what you have experienced, and then like you don't want to like show you're being vulnerable. So the intent was quite noble, but then like how does a noble intent becomes a fear, in your opinion?
Oh, I think it's definitely subconscious. I feel like subconsciously, for some reason, you stop looking at your intentions. You just become a creature of habit. And for so long, I had habitually built that wall. So it was definitely me getting to the why behind the building of that wall that enables me to tear those structures down. Yeah.
So subconscious, which means subconscious.
I definitely think subconsciously we develop so many interesting habits that just become habitual.
Yeah. So yeah, because you mentioned the word subconscious, and obviously the very word subconscious means which is happen beyond our level of consciousness, right? So well, obviously the way to overcome it is to to modify our subconscious. But how can we modify something which is not within our conscious level consciousness? Yeah.
Well, for me, I found journaling. I found always stopping to ask myself why, the why behind something. So if I'm not enjoying, for example, my son, take that example that I gave with my son coming up the steps. He needs me for something. At the time I was on the supervision call, but my mind subconscious, I was thinking, oh no, she's going to think that I'm not paying attention to her. I'm not giving her my full. So there was that buildup. But then when he came up the stairs and she helped me tear that understanding down, he just needed me briefly for a couple of seconds. It was not going to interplay with any of those thoughts. So I guess since that moment for me, I just now, when I find I'm getting trapped in a thought, I just visualize him climbing the stairs and I go straight to why. So I'll stop myself straight away. And there's a lot of work by Dr. Joe Dispenza, who talks a lot about your unconscious and subconscious thinking. Yeah. And I'm only now beginning to really understand his work and diving into that more recently. So, yeah.
So the purpose, the why has to be absolutely strong, absolutely solid. Yeah. And then we can find a way to modify our subconscious level, and journaling definitely helps. Yeah,
journaling for me, I love to journal. I've journaled every day since I was a child. It's funny, when I've read back through some of my journaling entries, I see where the perfectionist was built. But I think that more recently, with what's been happening and what's been going on in my personal life, I've seen where that's kind of come from as a kid as well. So it's quite fascinating when you see you get to the why and you become the awareness, but it's not always going to be easy. So I'm not going to say for anyone that's listening to this that finding the why is easy. You will go through so many different things. You may even go through the 5 stages of grief, but it's really something that's, once you've stepped through it, and it's just so life-changing and pivotal.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that, Brooke. Well, Brooke, I just want to share a little candid moment. Well, I'm not, and honestly, I haven't shared it to you as well, so it's totally fresh, totally new. Actually, for for the information of the audience, actually, Brooke and I, we go long way back. I think even before Genius, because like it was like I think early 2000s or 2010 or something. Like I got a friend request, and they mentioned his name Brooke Slopak. At that time, I do not know who is Brooke. I was thinking it was a fake profile. So immediately I let it out for a long time, and immediately I deleted. And thinking back, I regret it so badly, Brooke, and I have to apologize to you for doing that, because like I mean, rolling back the years right now, I got to know a person who is truly authentic, who is truly authentic, not fake, and a dear friend. So yeah, I didn't share that.
You know, I don't even know where if I sent that request. So it's quite funny because I'm like, I don't remember sending it. But I think that for the purpose of this, that people meet when it's the right time for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I totally agree. I think that it's when you watch back, there's Genius videos, and when you watch them back or side by side, and I'm like, oh, look, there's Yuvarajan and there's me. I feel like that journey, we're just, regardless of distance, you're in Malaysia, I'm in Australia, regardless of distance, I feel like people sometimes are just meant to meet. The universe has its own way of bringing people that really help you through your journey, and will be, I guess, prominent in your journey as you continue on when it's the right and perfect time. So thanks to the universe, we met back at school.
Yeah. Thank you, universe.
Thank you, universe.
So yeah, Brooke. So going back to the interview, your coaching persona is authentic flow, right?
Yes.
I just want to ask you, why is being authentic so important to you?
Because I just think, I was talking about it before with society structures. I feel like people have moved away from their authenticity, not only out of the fear of not being perfect, but out of the fact that some of the societal structures that are in place don't necessarily embrace diversity. I'm really proud to say I work at an inclusion school. I think if you look back to young version of me, I was playing school at the age of 4. I was, they say you're born with a purpose. And I think back now to the memories my aunts and families have about me, and I was always with children, but I always had a dark student in my class or a child with Down syndrome in my class. And, all of those sorts of things, even when I was 4 years old, I just thought it was I just really valued neurodiversity and culture. So I think everyone's like that. You just think the whole world's like that growing up. You think it's a magical unicorn out there. But then I'm blessed to have friends who have neurodivergent children. And unfortunately for them, some of the school-wide systems don't work. And they struggle for places in schools, and they struggle to find their feet. And I really think it's time to be more proactive in helping create what that little version of me wanted when I saw the world, to actually helping to create that in society now. People have fear of what they don't know or understand. And a lot of the time with neurodiverse thinking, people don't understand you. So therefore they think that you are the issue. What I think people need to learn is how to understand each other and embrace each other's differences more so that as we go forward in the future, there can be that paradigm shift, as well as structural changes to schools. Like schools have been the same for hundreds of years. There needs to be change in the system to embrace everybody. Yeah.
Inclusivity is truly the way to go forward, the forward to go. I truly agree with that.
Yeah.
And just now when you mentioned about fear of the unknown, I remember a quote by the late Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh, who mentioned about human beings have 2 types of fear: fear of the unknown and the known fear. And normally human beings tend to gravitate towards the known fear, because like we have experienced it before. So therefore we will experience fear, but we know what to do about it. But fear of unknown is normally human beings will avoid fear of the unknown, because it's something unknown, something new. Like so they do not know what to do about it. Yeah.
And it's that fear that can sometimes stop them and just get them to be, no, we're going to exclude that child, or we're going to exclude that person. They're culturally different. They're neurodiverse. It's easier to just exclude them. And it's now, I think going forward in time, I'd like my son to grow up in a world where that fear is seen as growth and learning. We are learning about the unknown. We are learning about the way that they think. We are learning about inclusivity. And I'm really proud to say I'm in a spot today where I've just actually accepted a scholarship to study further with Melbourne University, but also to work in a school where inclusion is one of our values. So you're teaching these children from a very early age about learning through the unknown.
Well, I mean, first of all, I just want to wish you congratulations on receiving your scholarship to further your studies. And I believe it will definitely benefit you and, you know, upgrade you to a higher level and better understanding. And yeah, as I say again, inclusivity is definitely the way forward. Yeah,
definitely. And I think that's just going to take time. I'm not expecting to change a system. They say it can take over 100 years. But if you can be part of the early change of that, and I think that's what's so beautiful also about the JSCS program, is that it is creating change. And life coaches, it's such a different it's a different paradigm compared to psychology. And it's, you know, a lot of the time it's on, I love both. So I love psychology and life coaching, but a lot of the time with life coaching, the person is at the driving seat of the GPS.
Correct. Absolutely. So, so just now you mentioned about being inclusive, inclusivity, right? So, if I'm just wondering if inclusivity is such a very important thing on in this world, crucial, but why do some people tend to go against it?
Because it's easier to follow, like we've just said before, it's easier to follow the known. It's easier to say, okay, I agree with the community that I am. You've got to go back to the fact that conformity, you've got to go and think about, it's easier to just stand with this group because this group stood here for so many years. Whereas to go out by yourself and speak out for, and that's why I love Knowledge Worth Sharing. And I love what you're doing with your niche, Yuvarajan, because you are educating people and helping individuals to step beyond that. And I think anyone that can transform or have this place where they know it's safe to talk about these things, it's really important. And your platform is one of these. So keep continuing your good work on that too. Because I know, over here in Australia, inclusivity is valued a lot more sometimes than what it can be valued over in Malaysia. We don't deal with this, societal structures are different. And over here, it's become a lot better than when my dad was young. It's much easier now. But I think, like I said, my whole neighborhood is cultural diverse. But it's still, in certain other countries, not either. And there's a lot of work to do on it. And people revert to the old. It's easier. No one really wants to do the hard work, do they?
Yeah. Well, Brooke, my next question is more like something more hypothetical. But just like you mentioned, you compare between my country and the country we're staying in, Australia. And you say that Australia are more open towards inclusivity, while in my country that there are some issues, especially about the treatment towards LGBT communities and minorities, all that. So I just want to ask you a very hypothetical question. As a country, what can a country do to be more inclusive, in your opinion?
Oh, that's a big one, because I sit from the educational standpoint, where I still think it starts with the education system, but that even starts before us, if that makes sense. That starts with politicians and political thinking that I don't get to be a part of, because I'm not well educated in that area. So I really think it starts with really good understanding of inclusion and a really deep country awareness of inclusion. And then it's got to be a lot of people from a lot of different professions working together to create that change.
So basically, it's as you mentioned at the very beginning, collaboration, right? Collaboration of many parties.
It's got to be that collaboration. I think it's definitely something that takes more than just. I'm privileged to work in a school that has this thought of our value is inclusion, but it takes more than just one school. It takes a wider community. And I think that that's where all of those people that are being activists right now, I was listening more recently to Round Hole Square Peg, and she's quite she's a parent with a child who's got neurodiversity. And she's out there running this podcast, but without support, she can't run her podcast. So it takes lots of change makers to do that, and it takes collaboration.
Well, Brooke, since you mentioned that that individual, I would like to have her in my podcast too, because we have something in common, right? So
yeah, definitely. You're both definitely working for those that can't necessarily have the voice right now to speak up for themselves.
Yeah. So Brooke, through your authentic flow, who are your target clients?
To be honest with you, Yuvarajan, I've taken that step back and I've kind of gone, how can I life coach through what I do at school? So because I tried to take this step out of the classroom, and then I found that 4-year-old girl inside of me just looking at me saying, no, you can't leave me here. You've got lots more work to do. So that's what's driven me back to university and back to further study, because I'm exactly where I'm meant to be in the education system. It's just time for me to step out of that perfection shell and use every skill that I developed at JSCS to actually implement into my teaching pedagogy. So for me, it's that my target client are the students, are the people who will lead tomorrow. Because if we can get this system or have an advocate in this system, then perhaps there will be change for the neurodiverse thinkers. I want to actually go further and study dyslexia. I don't know a lot about that currently, but it's definitely something that I want to work with. I think every child and every individual should be taught the ability to read. So for me, I've kind of gone down a different rabbit hole that it's taken me to my purpose. My ideal clients would be my students.
Wonderful. Well, I'm so happy to hear that. So, Brooke, my next part of series of question will be more personal. I mean, like, you don't have to answer if you don't feel comfortable.
It's fine.
Well, I mentioned in my earlier episode that I traveled to Australia for the very first time in February, which is also a last minute plan.
I know I couldn't quite accommodate you during that time, but I have arranged for December.
Yeah. I mean, I totally understand, because it was a rough period for you. So I want to talk more about that, because about the current issue going on in Ukraine. Well, people have seen the news. They know about the war going on. There's a battle going on there. But I think people need to hear more about the human stories. Obviously in the war, I believe in the war, there's no winners. There's all losers.
We just can't believe that in this now and daytime that there is war, but there's always going to be totalitarians and people who want to lead through them. So we definitely over here don't blame anyone who's Russian. It's sad sometimes the way that the media can sort of pinpoint things and blame and shift blame to certain people or a whole culture or a whole race. It's just really taught us to bond together as a family. And I don't want to say too much about it, because it's the story of not just me, it's the story of the family. But I really think that it's something that's really important to take away from this, is that it's not all of Russia. It's not a culture. It's not the Russians. It's just, unfortunately, a regime that's being led. And there's truth and falsities, and the media will always sensationalize what they want to sensationalize. what's really important right now is just that people see the human side of each other and take care of each other, and really look out for each other. We can't help, unfortunately, we're thousands of miles away. We can't do much for the borders or for the war, but of the people that have to be involved in it. And even they don't necessarily want to be involved in it, and that's on both sides. But we can stand for hope for the future, that maybe, just maybe, this war will cease soon, hopefully, and people will learn something from it to take forward to tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, that's why, bro. That's why, bro. I would like to ask. I would like the people out there to know about a human story, because there are people suffering on both sides. Let's not talk about politics, because it has been talked on many media out there. So let's talk more about human stories. So I felt that when I come to Australia, I feel like it's the wrong timing, because I come during the war time. But I'm just curious, bro. Like, how are you as a person experiencing? Can you just like narrate the experience, like going through it?
Yeah. So I can talk for many people on this side. It's just, it brings you closer together. So it's like there's a juxtaposition right now. It's the good with the evil. Through this has come so much more family time. Through this have come deeper connections. Through this has come an awareness of not just my family, but the other people who are from Ukraine within the community. Also within my own classroom. I have students who have family or are very close to family there. And it's just come to the fact that if you unite together and you be there regardless of how people are, you can get through something. So it's been that tear down of a wall from my father, who assimilated, who now culturally is gaining more awareness and acceptance of what his actions that he's taken in the past. For me, it's just brought to the forefront that my 10-year-old has questions. What is Ukraine like? What is the food? How can we bond together? All of these sorts of things. And it's just really, for so many people here, just brought a connection through church, through events, through just getting together. But it's also taught many people to turn off the media, because you're not hearing necessarily the truth. So people are now not listening as much, but they're still working on the ground to help. So it's taught that you don't have to necessarily donate millions and thousands of dollars, but you can help in really small ways that can be effective going forward. So if there ever is a way for refugees to come over to Australia, if that is something that happens, then we're very proud to say that we would offer our homes and offer a place for them here.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, thank you for sharing that. I mean, like the element of hope, and then also the element of, staying together, united as a family of human beings, regardless of nationalities, religions.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We have people who I know who are Russian that have said, I'm sorry, Brooke, but it's not their fault. But now they can't necessarily give money to their families or help their families from here. And it's just that we don't want to have blame, but the media is so big on picking up, it's all Russians. It's not all Russians. There are, I'm hopeful, as Jane Goodall would say, hopeful that together we can work with compassion to have change.
Yeah. I just want to mention something interesting in the belief of Hinduism. Like, well, every Hindus believe there's a phases of time called yuga, or called age. So there are 5 yugas. I'm forgetting all 5. I can mention the 3: Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, and Kali Yuga. So Treta Yuga is where only the good people exist on earth. And then when it comes to Dwapara Yuga, or the subsequent yugas, there were good people and bad people existing side by side. And then when it comes to the age of Kali, or Kali Yuga, in every human being, there is a good and bad. It's about like a dilemma between a good and bad. So if you can win the battle, then you will do good. If you lose the battle, you become a bad person. So it's quite interesting.
Well, it's that hope that we're going to all work together for a better tomorrow. You just can't lose hope. We've got children. Like I said, my son is 10. I have my nephew and my niece. They'd been through COVID and then they'd been through this. And it's just a matter for them to see there is hope and there can be change because it's their future now. They are the future. We are, I'm still here. I'm still making a dent. I'm still helping in many capacities, but they are the future of tomorrow. How can we help these children to learn through compassion, through their actions, they can create change?
Yeah. I mean, both of us are teachers, so we normally spend our time mostly with children, right? So I just want to share one experience with one particular student. Well, this student, she's quite okay, but children, they tend to follow whatever the adults surrounding them are doing. So they just take it as it goes, right? So once I was in the class, then suddenly when this student told me, he said, "Sir, I hate Indians." I was like, why do you hate Indians? I said, no, they are dirty, they are gangsters, they are alcoholic, they are very violent. I mean, hello, I'm Indian. I am an Indian. So
and that's the thing. But then you think, okay, well, where has that child learned that thinking from? And a lot of the time it comes down to, well, they've had a stereotype. And that's what I mean. The media, when they portray it as all Russians are this way now, this is happening in the Ukraine, but it's all Russians, it becomes a stereotype. And people cling to that stereotype and then they say, that's what I must say all are. And I've got friends who, they are Russian and they're the most gentle souls you'll ever meet. But they hear from people all the time, oh, you must be hard and you must be evil and you must have this totalitarian part of you. And it's, no, I am Russian. I'm very calm, very settled. And it's just, you think, well, where did a child learn that? And that's where it's so important for children to be taught that it's, I don't know, like to scale, like we spoke about before, scale back, pull back those layers and teach the difference is okay. We are different. But that child's obviously been grown up with a family, the child from your classroom, where they've obviously had some really biases towards Indian people. And that's just really unfortunate for them because until they see that that's just the stereotype they've built up subconsciously because they've heard it through their parents so many times or through whoever they're surrounding themselves by, there won't be change in the world.
Actually. Yeah, and I find it, going back to the story, I find it really unfortunate because that student likes me. The student likes me, he respects me, and he is the most what do you call it? He shows the most interest to come to my class, to come teaching maths. And to hear that coming from him, I do understand he's still a kid, so it's not him who's although the words come through his mouth, but it's not actually him.
He's not he's a vessel saying certain things because he's learned it. And it's like, well, how do we discourage this learning or how do we change this learning? And that's where I really love that one of the school values at my school is inclusivity, because now when you hear that, you say, okay, we question it. Why do you have this thinking? How can we change this? What do you notice? I am Indian, but what do you notice in my traits? Okay, so mixed up with that identity you already have for your typical Indian person, what do you notice about me? Let's make a list. Let's look at this. Okay, let's see if we can get you thinking in a different form or different way, because it takes challenging thinking and challenging understanding in order to be able, I should say critical thinking, in order to really be able to break stereotypical thinking.
Yeah. And I remember what Jay mentioned in one of his lives. He mentioned that I think that was the answer, because he was responding to my question. Because I told a question about how do we overcome the negative situation, especially if the toxic person happens to be a close family member, then he just mentioned for every negative influence in your life, get a three positive people. So keep it a 1 to 3 ratio. So every negative
Yeah, 1 to 3.
1 to 3. So for every negative people, keep a three positive people in your circle to to overcome the negativity.
Yeah, to counterbalance that. And I think you could be one of those one people for that child.
Absolutely.
Because then what traits do they notice about you? How is that different from their thinking? And then, well, this teacher is Indian also. What do you notice about them?
Yeah.
And that's what I try. That's where I feel I am doing within my classroom. We're constantly talking about the neurodiverse children we have, and we're not saying they're a child, they have autism, that's why they're the way they are. It's they've got autism, but let's see what else is beyond that diagnosis. And they've got a diagnosis, an umbrella, but there's more to human under that. It's the same with culture. There's more to me than the fact that I'm an Australian Ukrainian person. I have other attributes too. It's kind of like layers. You just got to keep looking back, because I really believe we're a soul. So
yeah, because even in Gita they mentioned that well, everyone has different body, mind, and intellect, but the soul is the same for every person, because the soul or Atman is the same for every person. Is universal, is immovable, and it's the same for everyone.
Definitely agree.
Yeah.
You always teach me something, so I walk away with new knowledge. I'm like, I think this, and then you tell me where I can go and look at the Gita, and I'm like, okay, well now it's funny because I think this, but now it's in there. So it's funny how we always think and keep thinking. So I thank you so much for always pushing my thinking.
Yeah, and I also thank you for being my true friend and also being my close comrade throughout this journey. And yeah, I can see that, and I'm looking forward to meet you in person soon. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to taking you hiking. I know that you went hiking this week, but I'm like, yes, when you come to Melbourne, and I've already scheduled that time off, so I'm really excited about it. So
yeah, awesome.
Apologies for last time. It's so raw to meet somebody that's so understanding about things that are happening in your life, to be able to just, because you have friends throughout the same time. There's just been a lot going on with my family. So I've been spending time just really with them. And there's been people along the way who sort of question whether you actually are their friend or not, but it's nothing to do with that person as to why you haven't been able to give them time. It's just there's been a lot going on that I also needed a lot of alone time to process.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So Brooke, my next will be a penultimate question. Like, how can the audience reach you?
Oh, it's funny because I haven't been on social media for 4 months. So the audience probably can't reach me at the moment. I've kind of retreated back into studying. Maybe in time, I will start to think again about what I'm going to do. But right now I'm in the rabbit hole of learning. And yeah, but I'm always available if people wanted to reach out and have discussions, or if there is anybody that's child is struggling at school and they just want to have some strategies into how to help their neurodiverse thinking child, I'm always happy to sort of help. So I do have Instagram, but I very rarely will post anything out there. I'm sort of in the insular bubble of continuing to learn. And I know Yuvarajan and so many people who we studied with went into the world of going straight online and having coaching and things like that. But for me, it really helped me find my purpose, which is those kids. I want to become a better teacher. I want to expand my pedagogy, and I want to help those children. And I think now's the time. My son is 10. Now's the time for me to go back into the theory of practice, and only for the betterment of myself. And I think the students I get to meet along the way.
Yeah. Well, Brooke, I really love when you pronounce my name with perfect diction, perfect intonation, because my name to be honest, like some people, they will get tongue tied to mention their name because my name is quite unique. I mean, not for Indian tongue, but for person who doesn't speak Sanskrit, Hindi, or Tamil, they find it difficult to mention it. But you mentioned my name with such effortlessly. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
So
well, you're definitely like I said, you're definitely like more like family than friendship now. It's just through, I think it's very raw to be able to have such conversations with people where you just are so authentic because of the, like I said, the exterior that we all place up. So it's very easy to have these conversations with you. So I feel your mission to change the world through being a life coach for people who have suffered injustice or people who are culturally and racially discriminated against. I think it's such a beautiful thing because it's just so needed. And I think I feel you can make a change for so many people.
Thank you so much, bro. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the kind words. And yeah, bro, before we go to our quick five questions, I would like to ask one last question about your current project with your fellow comrades from Australia, which is the Link project. Can you please explain more about that?
Well, it's kind of come to a stall just because there's been so many things going on, but it's more about people hearing the unique voices of an everyday person. We really believe that every single person in this world has a story and that story matters. So it's just a platform for us to get people, everyday individuals, get their voices out there. I really believe that there's so much to learn, and we all do, that there's so much to learn from each other, and that you get inspired daily from even the smallest of things. And people should be great, whether it be the truck driver or whether it be the lady that works in the office at the medical center, or whether it be the neighbor, whoever it is, everyone's got a story and everyone's important to the change of the world. So if we can highlight the importance of these individuals, I think more and more you might lower the need for depression. And people who think they have to be a certain type or suit a certain mold in order to be able to be seen as successful. Because I think even if you're a stay-at-home mom and you've just done the washing, and that's what you've done today, it's not just the washing, you've done so many other things, and it needs to be celebrated, because there's a lot of money that goes into athletes, for example, but then these people who are doctors, or these people, particularly nurses, they're underpaid and their stories aren't seen as successful as others. But without nurses, what would we do? And the truth is, they are every day the front line who makes such a change. So we're so grateful for them. So the Link Project is all about authentic voices and just let's hear each other's story, because we all matter.
Yeah, and I'm honored and blessed to be part of the guest in the earlier episode. So
it was great to have you on. We have stalled for a while, but I believe we'll be getting back together very soon.
Yeah. So audience, if you want to know more about the Link Project, I will update about their how to get reach them in the description of this video and also this podcast audio as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome, Brooke. I mean, I feel it's my responsibility to spread to everyone about this platform, this wonderful platform.
Yeah, thank you.
So, Brooke, we have come to the final part of the interview, which is a quick fire question. So it's more like a rapid fire question, but you can answer more than a word question. You can have more than a word answer. Okay. The first question will be, what is the book you are currently reading right now?
What is the book I'm currently reading? It's Ajahn Brahm, Opening the Door of the Heart.
Wow, nice.
Yeah, that's what I'm currently reading. Beyond the 5 novels I'm reading for school. But yeah.
Okay, next one will be, Brooke, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years?
Studying, and I keep having this visualization of having a door plaque. I don't know where the door plaque is, so let's see where that takes me.
Nice. And the next question will be, if you could turn back time, if you could go back, if you go back to your younger days, what will be a piece of advice you will give to the younger Brooke?
That's a really good question. It's got me really thinking.
Okay.
Just to never quit, to keep going. And I think the younger Brooke really thought the world was unicorns, really thought everybody would come out and everybody felt that way about inclusion. I just really thought it was within everybody. And it's just, I wish I'd been able to tell myself that younger Brooke being able to tell herself a couple of years ago, not to give up and to keep it going, because I now believe in it wholeheartedly again. But there was a moment interim where I did lose that spark.
Well, very well said, Brooke. And the next question will be, okay, Brooke, if you have a choice between creating a movie or writing a book about your life story, what will be the title of it?
Oh, that's a really good one. My son and I actually had this discussion the other day.
Okay.
It would probably be my son's name, because I don't think that so his name is Reed. Reed is my favorite word. And it's his name. It's not spelled. He's spelled R-E-E-D. But I definitely think Reed would be the title. Because if you read and you think beyond, people have been thinking for thousands of years. There's so much scripture, there's so much to read that you can continuously learn. So Read would probably be the title.
Okay. And I'm looking, and if you're planning to make it a movie, I'll be the first person to buy a ticket to watch it.
I think my son's more likely to do that. He's got this creative idea. It's beautiful because you go on one, you get to experience a journey. And when you get to have such profound change that I think the JSCS brings, it really then brings further change for your children. So yeah, I think he's pretty likely to produce something in the future. I have this big thinking about him.
That's good. Interesting. Looking forward to it. And yeah, the last question will be, what will be your parting word to the audience?
Be you and stand in your truth and be just you. Authentically, you are enough, and continue learning. Like, be you and learn.
Simple, short, and be you and stand up for your truth. Right? Yeah. So, Brooke, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for spending some time to be in this podcast interview. Yes, I know it has been a long time coming, and I'm so glad we have finally make it happen.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on and having me so messy. We just got home from basketball, and it was such a good game because they just didn't think that they would win a game this year. And just be you and stand up for you. And that's something that they did today. They just were themselves, and beautiful. So thank you, Yuvarajan. And please keep sharing your knowledge, worth sharing, and standing in your truth, because it's something that really many people need. So thank you.
Thank you so much, bro. And yeah, we can bring forward our conversation off camera because we have to keep it short right now. So thank you so much, Brooke. Thank you, and thank you, audience. And we come to the end of this interview. I hope you have learned many informative inputs from Brooke and from this interview. And yeah, we will see you in the next interview. Thank you. Bye bye.